Alright, so today I'm going to show you how to make your very own face mask. So to start, you're going to need 4 pieces of 19-inch ribbon or 2 pieces of 7-inch elastic. If you don't have elastic, just use the ribbon, but rubber headbands also work from the dollar store, just dollar store headbands. Not the hairbands, because those will be, not hairbands like this, because that'll be too small and that will hurt behind the ears. So either 2 headbands or ribbon. And then you're going to need, this is optional, but if you want to make it a little bit more protective, then you're going to need a piece of not aluminum foil, you're going to need like a piece from a reusable pan, baking pan, or I use the top of like a can of almonds. You're going to want that about 2.5 inches by 1 inch. You're going to want to fold it in so it's not sharp on any, so none of the sharp sides are poking out. Or if you don't have that, a hair clip will work. You're just going to bend it in half. This one has something on it, so it's harder to bend, but just peel that off if it does. And then for the cloth, you're going to need a piece of non-woven fabric. So you don't want flannels, you don't want anything that's woven. You want you want a fused fabric. So if you have a grocery bag like this, something like this will work to cut a piece out of. But the way to tell if it will let anything come through or out is you run water over it, and if the water soaks through, then you can't use it. If the water beads off, you can use it. So oilcloth bags like that will work, but the problem with those is they're a little less breathable. It's harder. And one like, my mom's gonna bring this to me real quick. One like this not good. You can see if you put water on it, it would just soak right through. Can't use that. My ribbon fell. And then you're going to need 2 pieces of 9-inch just cotton fabric. 9-inch by 7-inch cotton fabric. Doesn't matter what, just any cotton fabric will work. You're going to need scissors, pins or clips. I don't know if you can see that. Clips, and most likely you're going to need a seam ripper.
A what?
A seam ripper. I need it. Alright, let's get started. The first thing you're going to need is your 9-inch by 7-inch piece of fabric. I forgot to mention this in the last video, but your fusible fabric is going to be about 1/4 to 1/2 inch smaller than your actual fabric. Okay, so you're going to want your ribbon or your elastic, as the case may be, and you're just going to place it about 2 inches in from the top of your fabric. Right there, and then you're going to pin it in place. When you're using the pins, it's easiest to pin the pokey side towards you so that it's less likely for you to run over your needle, and it's the easiest to pull out. You're going to pin that in place, and then you're going to repeat for all 4 corners. And then once you're all done with that, you're going to want to roll this up. Just roll it completely and then pin it in place, so that when you're sewing, it doesn't get in your way. Now, if you're using elastic, you're going to want to take one of your pieces, and on each side, like you did with the ribbon, you're going to do that, but then you're just going to pin it also on the other side with the same piece, and do that for both sides like ears. The ribbon's just going to tie around your head. So now that these are in nice little rolls, you're going to take your second piece of cloth, and you're going to place it over the first, making sure all the little pieces of ribbon are inside, and the corners are lined up as best as they are. If your fabric isn't straight or one's bigger than the other, don't worry. When we sew, it's going to be fixed. Alright. And just a side note, if you're not using a sewing machine, it's going to be really difficult to get through all of the layers of fabric. So I recommend using a machine if you can. When you put the fabric down, you want to do right sides together, so the pretty sides facing each other. So then you're going to take your fusible piece of fabric and you're going to place it on top. making sure all the ribbon, little rolls of ribbon are inside, because you don't want those to be, you can just move them to the side more if they are hanging out at all. Make sure that's all in. Okay, and then you're going to pin in the corners, and you can do as many pins as you want or as little pins as you want, however you feel comfortable. Or you can use your clips. And you're just going to start with all 4 corners and then move in from there. Alright, so now we're going to head over to the machine. So now that we're at the machine, you're going to want to place your piece of fabric about the center, a little farther than the center, 2 inches from the center over or so, not 2 inches, about an inch over from the center. And you're just going to place that right with the needle. We do that so that when you're done, you can make a nice hole to pull it right sides out from. And then you're going to put your presser foot down. You're going to want about a 1/4 inch of seam allowance, so that just means a 1/4 inch from the edge. You want the middle of your presser foot to be a 1/4 inch from the edge. I'm actually using a jersey needle, not a jersey needle, a denim needle, so that, because this is going to get really thick later on, and so I don't want my needle to break. So I'm going to use a thicker needle, but that's up to you. And we're just going to sew around the edges, leaving about a 2 inch gap, or 1 to 2 inch gap when you get back. And you want to be careful not to sew over any of your ribbons where it's not supposed to. Like, you don't want it to be bunched up anywhere. And to turn the corner, for those of you who don't know, it's going to go very close to the edge, lift up your presser foot, make sure your needle is down, turn, and then put it down. And make sure we're keeping all that in, not sewing over any thread, and then we're going to leave a hole about that big, and lift our needle, pull it out, and that step is done. Alright, now that you've sewn all 4 corners, all around, you're going to go and you're going to clip your corners. So you want to clip right above your seam. You don't want to clip your seam, because that will leave a hole. And if you have like a ton extra fabric above your seam, you can just go and trim that a little bit. Just clean it up. But do not trim your thread, or you'll have holes. So you want to go right above the seam. And this just makes it easier when you're turning it right side out. It makes all the little corners like poke out nice and even. So we're just going to do that, and then we're going to go ahead and from your hole that you made, just push it inside out. And yeah, you can see my interfacing ripped a little. That's okay. So this doesn't look like very much at this point, but it will once we put our pin tucks in. Now if you're having trouble getting those corners out, take a pair of scissors. You got to be careful not to poke holes in your fabric, and just give it a little gentle push, very gentle, because you don't want to poke any holes, because those are repairable, but it just makes the process longer. If you do poke a hole, just go and turn it back inside out and sew over the corner again. Or if you find that you have any holes you missed when you were sewing. Alright, so now that we did that, we're going to take our piece of metal, if I can find where mine went. Oh, it fell. Alright, you're just going to stick that in. And make sure your fabric is nice and folded, none of the raw edges are showing. You feel where that metal is, because you don't want to sew over it. You're going to sew right above it to sew your hole closed, below it, and then if you feel like you need to, on the sides. You want to sew really close to the edge for this part. You want to start a little farther than your hole actually is. So now we're going to create our pin text. To find the center of your fabric, you're going to want to fold it in half and then just open it up and draw a line where the center is. Then you're going to want to take and you're going to want to fold it in thirds. So you're going to fold each side to the middle, that line. If you need, you can draw the line all the way across and just get it set nice and centered. Now if your eye tells you there's no way that's in thirds, just re-measure and do it again. Or if you don't like this, you can just take a measuring tape and measure how far half of it is, and do that. But this is the method I find easiest. All right, and then we're gonna do the same thing for the thirds now. So we're gonna have a line in the center, and then 2 more lines where the thirds are. So to create your pin tucks, you're gonna pinch right at the line you made for one of the thirds. You're just gonna pinch there, and you're gonna take a clip. Clips are preferable for this part, but pins will work. And you're gonna clip on both sides. And then you're gonna do it again with the middle. This is just so you get nice even ones. And on the other side. Alright, now that those are all done, just make sure they're fairly even, both sides, and then you're just gonna iron. You don't wanna iron your pins, your clips, and you wanna avoid your piece of metal as much as possible. And you can touch your piece of metal, you just don't wanna leave it on for too long. This is your final step. Good job, you made it. So what I've done here is I've taken out the first clip and I've just placed this in the machine, about very close to the edge. And I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna sew, making sure my pin tucks stay down. And I'm gonna take the next one out and keep it down with your finger until you get there. Don't run over your finger though. And I'm gonna do, after I do this, I'm gonna do a over stitch. So I'm just gonna go, instead of stopping there, I'm gonna go all the way to the corner, and I want a very thin stitch next to the edge. This just gives it a nice finished look. You don't have to do this part. And then back stitch, and it's done. Now, if it's all crooked, or if this top stitch is a little bit just doesn't look nice and pretty, you can take a piece of bias tape and you can just place it over the edge and sew that on, and it'll make the edge much neater. But otherwise, your mask is finished. And to put it on, just place it over your face, and then it ties up here with these two, and in the back with these two. And that's about it.